Hey, Mike with Nerd Problems Gaming here, and today's video will be doing a review and how to play video on the board game Hellbringer, so let's get into it. Now, a couple things before we jump into the video. This version of the game is still more of a prototype version, so there will be some updates from things like artwork and maybe minor rule changes to the game. And if you like what you see, it will be coming to Kickstarter soon, so definitely be on the lookout for that if you want to pick up a copy of this game. And to start out, I'll be jumping into some of the basics of the rules and how you play the game, but I won't go into every single detail of the rules, so be sure to consult the rulebook if you have additional questions. But with that said, let's jump into how to play. Alright, so now that we got the game out, let's walk you through the basic setup and how you play the game, and then I'll jump into my review after that. Alright, so to start out the game, the first thing you want to do is choose which player you're going to play as. And so there's several different classes that you can choose from. There's a hunter, a monk, a druid, a warrior, a paladin, and a sorcerer, and each one of these characters has their own unique stats, and they also have a different skill type, as you can tell by the different color at the top, which is basically skills that they can learn permanently throughout the game. Everyone can use any type of skill once, but you can master your colored skills as well as black skills that you find throughout the dungeon. So to help you better understand the stats, I'll walk through them briefly here. So hearts are your total health, shields are your armor, the eye is your perception, the lightning bolt is your action points, the book is the number of skills you can learn, and this card is your total hand size. So let's say, for example, I'm going to play as the warrior. I'll put them on the middle card here. And another thing to note, there's base starter items that each character start with. So the warrior starts with this warrior's sword, and it's also recommended that you start with this starter elixir. And so both of these would go in my starter hand once I draw my initial hand for the game, and the rest can be set off to the side. So one thing that's cool is the game comes with these different markers, and you can simply fill out your character's stats with them. So again, to start off the game, I filled out my base stats for my character, and now I'm going to build the draw deck throughout the game. And so to set that up, you're going to start the game off by dealing 4 piles of 8 cards from the common deck here. Now again, these rules are for solo play. It can be a little bit different when you play with multiple players, but in this walkthrough we'll be showing you how to play via solo. So once I've dealt out 4 piles of 8 cards, I'm then going to add the tomes to each one of these decks. So we'll start by doing tome 2, 3, 4, and 5. At this point, you'll also add a combat card to each pile. So now at this point, you're going to want to shuffle each one of these piles. Once you've shuffled all of the piles, you'll take location cards and place them under each deck. So the crypt card will go under 1. Cave is the next card you'll put under the next pile, followed by Hell, and then finally the Tomb card. And then also before you get started, make sure you deal yourself 4 more cards to form your starting hand. From here, you'll put them in reverse order with Tomb on the bottom, then the Hell pile, then the Cave pile, and then finally the Crypt pile. Alright, so the next thing that you want to do is set up the monster deck. And to do that, first you're going to read off the graveyard card and follow its instructions, as this is the starting location for the game. So what you'll do is you'll shuffle the starter monster cards, and you'll place 2 on top, plus 2 per player playing. So in this case, we'd put 4 on the top. You'll then set aside the remaining starter monsters. They won't be used for the rest of the game. And then you'll draw 2 monsters to start off the game. Now you might be wondering, what are these different layers for the monsters? And so what that means, the first one is an eyeball that's open without a slash through it, and that means monsters you can see. The middle level is one open and one with a slash through it. This is where you place cards if you're playing a multiplayer game, when one player can see the monster and one can't. And then the final top row is for monsters you can't see. And so to determine which monsters you can see, you look at your perception number. And so in this case, my warrior has a perception of 2. And looking at the monsters I just flipped up, the Hellhound has a perception of 2, and the arachnid has a perception of 3, meaning I can't see the arachnid right now, so I'm going to have to put that all the way to the back in the area out of sight. Now to start the game also, you're going to read Tome 1. And so before you start the game, you want to choose a campaign that you're going to play. This will determine which end demon, or basically the boss at the end of the dungeon, you're going to fight. And then it also determines what tomes you're going to read throughout the game. Another cool thing to note is that in the final version of the game, there'll be QR codes in every one of the campaigns that you can scan, and it'll actually read out the different tomes for you throughout the game. The game also does have a music soundtrack that you can play for each level of the dungeon. So that's a really cool aspect to further immerse yourself into the game. But let's say in this case I'm playing Campaign 2, so I'm going to need to find the red Drake card and set that off to the side, as this will be the final boss of the dungeon. So again, we've got the red Drake card here. We'll set this off to the side as we'll use that later, as it'll be the final boss throughout the game. So when it comes to playing your turn, it's actually pretty simple. You'll just look at your hand and see what actions you want to play. And so how you can determine what you can play, you'll look at the little action number here, and this indicates how much it costs to use that card. And so right now I just have one action point, so I could play this piece of armor, for example. So as you can see in the top corner, it's got the little purple symbol. And that just indicates where it's going to fit on the board. So purple would go here, green would go here, orange up there, and then blue down there. So let's start off by equipping a weapon. I do have one action point and I can equip this weapon. And so this number is what it is to equip the first time. But the first time you equip a weapon or item, you're able to activate its ability right away. So I'll use that right here. And now I can activate the ability. So now with the warrior's sword, I have the opportunity to attack. And so as you can see here, it's got the little number, and it indicates how many die I can roll to hopefully kill and defeat the enemy. So I can use 3 die in this case. So I'd simply take 3 combat die, roll those, and I got a 15. And so thankfully the Hellhound that I'm attacking right now does have 15 health. It's got 10 health and then 15 shields. So you simply add that number together. And if your damage number is equal to or greater than that number, you kill this enemy. And so now what happens is you'll flip it over and you'll be able to improve any one of your stats on your character. So you can simply stack the card. Let's say I wanted a little higher perception. I could put it there. I'll now erase my 2 perception and now make it a 3. Now a side effect of that is now that I have 3 perception, I can actually see the arachnid in the area where I previously couldn't see them. So I'll now bring them to an area where they're in sight. Now another thing to note that you can do on your turn is play skills. And so listed on your card with the green book is the number of skill points that you have. And basically that means you can equip that many skills. Now when I look at skills here, I've got one for 1 and I've got one for 3. And these are also both black, meaning that I can learn them and they would stay with my character. If I had one with a different color that was different than the warrior's base color, of brown in this case, I could use them as a one-time use, but they wouldn't be equipable for the rest of the game. So with that in mind, I could equip one of these to my character for free for my 1 skill slot, but in order to activate them on a future turn, I would need the listed number of action points here. So let's say I equip this one because I can equip 1 skill at this time. So again, I'll just place it off to the side, and this is where you list all of your skills that you've learned so far, and you're just limited to the skill cap here, but theoretically you could learn as many as you want, as long as you have the skill points to do so. Alright, so to wrap up my turn, basically I need to draw up to my hand size. So for this case, I have 5 for my hand size, I have 4 cards, so I'll need to draw the next card on top of the common pile. In this case, it's a tome card, so all I'll need to do is follow the instructions on the card. So this means all heroes will draw 1 card under the monster deck and put it towards an attribute point. And then you'll read Tome 2 from the campaign, furthering the story. So again, I take 1 from the bottom of the monster pile. Let's say I'll give myself another action at this time, so I'll be up to 2 action points for all my future turns. I still only have 4 cards, so I need to draw another to get up to 5. So now that I've filled up my hand, it's now the monster's turn. So to determine what happens on a monster turn, you're going to roll this monster die. So the monster die has a few different sides. One is going to be this symbol, which means it's going to attack your companions. And so all the monsters on the board will attack only your companions, saving your player from taking damage. This symbol is attacking players, so it will just target the players, not the companions. This symbol that has both means that the enemies will attack both the companions and the players. And this symbol means that you defended against the enemy attack, and so you'll simply have to discard 2 cards and the enemies won't be able to hurt you or your companions. So again, we'll roll to see what happens. And we got the defense this time. So I'll simply need to discard cards from my hand. So I can't actually use this spell as a warrior, so I might as well get rid of that one. And then let's say I want to get rid of this ability because I don't yet have 3 action points to use it. So I'll discard those and now I can take my turn. So again, my action points have reset. So I've got this, I might as well equip it for 1 action point. And again, the abilities activate right away. And so this one said increase my max hand size. And so I'll draw that card right now. Can't use any of these other cards, but I still have 1 action point where I could use my warrior's sword as an attack. So again, I can roll 3 die in attempts to kill this arachnid. And so I got 25 damage. The arachnid has 10 shields and 5 health. And so I did enough damage to kill the arachnid, and I can add it as an attribute point to my character. So this time I'm going to add it to perception again, making my total of 4. Now a special thing happens when you've killed all the monsters on the board. You're going to draw 5 cards from the common pile, play any that activate right away, and then you'll be able to draw one of them into your hand. So I've got the 5 cards here that I drew, and I think I'll take this one. It's a very powerful warrior spell, and so I'll add this to my hand and then I'll discard the rest. I then need to continue to draw up to my max hand size, which in this case is 6, so I'll need to keep drawing cards until that happens. Now the next card happened to be a combat card, so in this case I'll need to draw 1 monster, and then I'll draw 1 card from under the common draw pile, and then discard this card, and the effects are applied. So again, I'll flip up a monster. I can see it because my perception is high enough. I'll draw 1 card from the bottom of the deck. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I need 6 for my hand size. So I've got this now. And so again, now that I've finished my turn, it will move to the enemy's turn, where they will roll the enemy die. This time they attacked, so I'll follow the instructions on their card. So in this case, it says they have a claw attack, which does 2 red die of damage. So I'll simply roll 2 red die. And in this case, it did 20 damage. But if you look at my health, I have 50. And so the only way I can die is if the total damage an enemy does is more than my health plus my shields combined. So in this case, 20 is less than 50, so I'm safe. You also don't reduce your health or reduce your shields when you're attacked. It's basically an all or nothing from enemies. So if you have enough health and shields combined, you'll be able to survive an enemy attack. So now it's my turn to do things. I've got several items here that I could equip. I think I'll equip this armor because I don't have a piece of armor yet. So again, I would need to use 1 action point to do that, and then it would give me these bonuses. So in this case, my armor goes up by 5 and my perception goes up by 3. Now I still have 1 point of action that I can do. I don't want to play anything from my hand, but I do have the ability to use my warrior sword again, so I'll do that and roll 3 die of damage to hopefully kill the bear. So I did 25 damage and the bear has 20 health, so I did defeat it, and so now I'll get an extra attribute point where I choose. So this time I'm going to choose another action point, and so technically I get that action point right away. So if I had another thing worth 1 action point I wanted to do, I could do that. Since there's no monsters on the board though, I'm going to need to draw the next 5 cards and implement its effects. So this next card is a crypt card, which is the next level in the dungeon. So I'll need to draw 2 monster cards, and all monsters now get +1 to their perception level, making them harder to see. Again, I still need to finish up drawing those 5 cards. So I've got 2 so far, but now a combat is up. So I have to draw another monster. I'll draw 1 from the bottom of the deck. And then I'll move on to the tome. In this case, it says draw 5 cards. Player will keep 1 and discard the rest. So I should technically start a second pile doing this exact same thing. I need to finish up getting these as well. And so I've already reached the cave now, so I need to draw 2 more monsters. And now the enemies all have +2 perception. So thankfully all of these monsters are still in my sight because I have a perception of 7. Now again, I still need to get up to 5 cards here. So now from the first time I cleared all the monsters, I need to take one of these abilities. So let's say I take this flaming sword here. I'll discard the rest. Now I'll finish up the tome here, so I'll read the actions that are here, meaning that I'll draw 1 from this pile of 5 cards. I think I'll take this defense card, so I have one of those. I'll discard the rest. So now that I have finished up the tome card, I need to read tome 3 in the campaign book. I've drawn that extra card. I'll look at my hand size, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. My hand max is only 6, so I'm going to have to discard one, and I'll get rid of this one here. So that round was pretty intense. A lot more monsters have appeared, and in this case, I again need to roll the monster die to determine the monster's attack. So in this case, the monster is going to attack everyone. So I'm going to have to activate every single monster on their board and their special abilities. So there's a good chance I might not make it on this roll. So after going through all the cards, this is all the die that the monsters get to roll. So quite a few. So I'm probably not going to survive this, but we'll see. So the monsters got a total of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 65 damage. And I only have 55 between my health and my armor, but thankfully I have some items that I can use to possibly keep myself alive. So when it's an enemy attack, you can use defense cards and you can use potion cards to help heal yourself. And so I only need a few more health to survive, so I'll use my potion card and that'll defend against the incoming attack and survive, thankfully. Unfortunately, the enemies had some extra bonus abilities. One makes me discard a skill that I've learned when I get hit, another makes me discard a green armor, and another makes me discard a blue armor. So I've got a blue and a skill, so I have to discard those to move on. But thankfully I survived, and I'll be able to live again to do another attack on this turn and use my abilities. And so again, play will continue until you make it all the way through the dungeon and face off against the dungeon boss, or if you're defeated throughout the dungeon. But now that you have a better idea on how the game works, let's jump into my review. So now that you know a bit more about the game and how it's played, how do I actually feel about it? Well, so far I'm a really big fan of the game. It's definitely one of my favorite solo board games. Now the game itself isn't just a solo board game. You can play it cooperatively with up to 3 players, but I did really enjoy the solo mode of the game. And it really has that feel of a modern day dungeon crawler similar to Diablo. And so it kind of reminded me of games like One Deck Dungeon, but I feel like this game was a lot more expansive. There's a ton more monsters to fight. There's a huge deck of item cards and abilities that you'll find. And I did like the fact that you could play as any character and use any character's abilities. Just depending on which character you were, you might be able to master some skills throughout the entire game. I did also feel like each character had their own distinct feel, and some were certainly more challenging than others. There's a ton of different modes to the game. So you can play solo, you can play cooperative, there's different challenge modes in the game as well. On top of that, like I had mentioned, the game is roguelike, so how the deck plays out, the cards you'll draw each time you go into the dungeon, the monsters you'll fight are all different every single time you play. So I think that really enhances the replay value of the game. As I mentioned, there's different modes, so there's a way to play it more on an easier mode. There's a more challenging mode that you can do. So once you get the feel of the game and you want to push your luck and challenge yourself even more, that's an option. Another thing that I really like about the game are the components themselves and kind of the layout of the game in general. It can seem a little bit confusing when you're setting it up for the first time, but once you get the feel of things and the overall flow of the game, it's really simple to play, and gameplay sessions don't take that long, usually anywhere from a half an hour to an hour in most cases. Another thing that I really like is the dry erase board, where you keep track of your stats throughout the game. Again, I played other dungeon crawling games where you're keeping track of all your health, the items that you have, the armor, and trying to calculate things, and it can become really difficult and tedious. Where this game made it really simple to track everything, and I really like that. Another thing that simplifies it is the fact that all the dice either have nothing, 5s, or 10s on them. So instead of trying to calculate a bunch of single digits or a ton of dice altogether, it really simplifies it and makes it easy because you're just adding up 5s and 10s or nothing on the many dice. On top of that, it's really fun to throw the huge amounts of dice that sometimes you'll have on hand. So for example, there was one attack I was using where I was rolling almost 20 die in one roll just for a single attack. And so that was really cool to build up your powers over time to unleash these massive attacks on enemies. I also like the fact that all the characters can equip all of the different weapon types and items that you'll find. Some obviously work better with some characters more than others, but I still thought that was really cool that you had that feature where you could kind of customize your character as you went, and it was different every time. On top of that, when you kill the monsters, you can allocate your ability points in any way you choose, so you can power it up based on your needs in the given situation, or if you like an overpowered character in a certain stat, you can do that as well. Another feature that I thought was really cool is the game comes with its own soundtrack. I don't feel like I've really played many, if any, board games that had that feature, so I think that's really cool. It can pull you into the game even more and make it more immersive. There's also QR codes that will be in the different campaigns, so it can again further pull you into the story by having it narrated as you go through the different campaigns throughout the game. There are a bunch of campaigns in the game as well. I think if you like dungeon crawlers, you're into solo board games, and you enjoy games like Diablo, I would highly recommend checking out Hellbringer, as I've had a ton of fun with it so far. I think it's really simplified the dungeon crawling experience and made it a ton of fun, and the roguelike elements really enhance the replay value as well. But again, like I had said, this is a prototype version of the game, so it will be even better when it fully comes out. And if you'd like to pick up a copy and back it on Kickstarter, we'll have links in the description below where you can do so. And if you like videos like this on video games, board games, and everything nerdy, check out one of our other videos here. And if you haven't done so yet, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell notifications to get the latest updates of new nerd videos we put out. But once again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you more soon.